Spider-Man the Animated Series is a show very dear to my heart. Premiering in 1994, this series introduced an entire generation to the world of Spider-Man. While I was somewhat familiar with him due to watching Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends previously, it was this series that made me fall in love with the character and his world. Heck, it's what made me want the comics too in order to expand my knowledge on it. My first Spider-Man comic was The Amazing Spider-Man 294. Yeah, a rough start, but a topic for another time. The 90s cartoon even introduced me to Spider-Man toys, and I collected a few of them as a kid, something I recently started doing again with the Marvel Legends Amazing Fantasy Spider-Man impressing me so much. While this show is loved by many, and rightly so, there's a specific scene that's become a meme. You see, this show was the first animated appearance of the now classic Spider-Man antagonist, Venom. While the origin of the symbiote suit that would become half of Venom was a lot more complicated in the comics revolving around the Secret Wars storyline, the cartoon opted to streamline it. So on April 29, 1995, the first episode of the three-part storyline, The Alien Costume, aired. This introduced us to the alien symbiote that bonded with Peter, slowly pushing his aggression to a peak. That peak being in the church bell tower, where Spider-Man is on the verge of killing a villain named the Shocker. This is when Peter finally snaps out of it and fully realizes how dangerous the suit is, forcing it off him with the sonic sounds of the bell in the tower. Afterwards, the symbiote, discarded and seeking revenge, bonds with a captive Eddie Brock, creating Venom. It's a good three-parter. Heck, it's a great three-parter, and the introduction of this character in general was a game-changer to Spider-Man as a whole. But it's a very specific scene in the church I want to talk about, and this is where I remind you all that super thanks and Patreon support is appreciated, because I am 100% sure this clip is going to get the video demonetized and choke the video's reach. Anyways, enough shilling, here's the scene.
Back here, Shocker! Shocker! You can't escape me! I'll chase you to the ends of the earth!
It's somewhat awkward, isn't it? There's been a lot of people that have claimed this scene is overacted, including in the title of the video itself. Heck, it's gotten to be so well known that the head writer for the show commented on the video, and he wasn't happy. More on that later. But here's the thing, this video title and a lot of people in the comments are wrong, and the writer, he's actually correct about the scene. Christopher Daniel Barnes, the voice for Spider-Man in this cartoon, absolutely did not overact this scene. Does it seem a bit off? I'd imagine it would to a lot of people, especially people who don't know how animation is produced. Let me explain. Animation, as I'm sure you can imagine, is a labor-intensive job, but the way it's produced can easily be lined out. Spider-Man, being a show focused on drama and action, started with scripting. While some cartoons, mostly comedy, tend to be written via storyboards, most action shows start with a script before anything else. These scripts could be done by regular writing staff on the show, or maybe just a person for a single episode. It varies. After this, the storyboarding is done. The storyboard gives animators the basic blueprints of things like setting, composition, and how the characters are supposed to move. Think of it like a basic comic for the final episode. Not everything from the script or even storyboards make it into the final product, but it's still a very important step. Next is the voice acting. Now, this can sometimes happen before the storyboarding or even during, but the voice acting is a key component, and is done before any full animation is done. This allows the animators to match lip sync as well as the expressions and body language to match the voice. There's a lot more steps here to deliver a final product, like in-betweening and maybe some voice lines needing to be re-recorded in post, but that's the basic outline. The only time this differs is in parody work like C-Lab 2021, or when stuff like anime is localized and needs an English dub, but that's a different video. Maybe. Since the voice lines are done first, this scene isn't overacted. It's under-animated. I don't know enough about the behind the scenes to know why this went to air in this state, or maybe why it didn't have a re-recording of the scene's lines. But I do know the audio works well overall, especially when the animation is reshot. How can I say that? Well, because I did it. There's also the example of the redubbed Sailor Moon Deke episodes you can find on YouTube. Before I get into that, though, and show the final product I did, let's get into John Simper's comment. Read off by Hitan Misuru.
I hate it that people with no talent chop up little bits of other people's video and post them, totally out of context, to get hits. The whole point of this episode was Peter Parker losing his mind because of the black suit, as you well know. This scene was the culmination of an entire episode which built up to this climactic moment. So, to take this last little bit, isolated from its build-up, is criminal. Of course, it's going to look overblown and silly. This is everything I hate about the internet rolled up into one shining example. And Chris Barnes never overreacted a day in his life. He's a brilliant voice actor. I detest people who chop up other people's work on the internet, YouTube, Twitter, et al. Not everything is a joke for less talented, uncreative minds to cannibalize and derive monetary benefit from. Hey Andrew, go make something of your own for a change instead of mangling other people's work, if you're even capable. And no, I'm not going to look at or respond to anything you say. You're not worth it.
You know what? I get it. You work on a show for years and it gets killed by some other goon that pissed off an exec before you could finish, and people know it mostly because it got turned into a meme. This show took years to make, and a lot of work and care was put into it. It can't be fun to have people mocking it, especially without knowledge of why it is the way it is. But at the same time, you can't react like this, John. I think a better route would have been explaining how animation works and maybe some of the behind-the-scenes details as to why it played out like this. Just food for thought. Well, I guess it's time to give you guys what you want. Now, this isn't full animation. This is going to be closer to a storyboarding or a really basic animatic, as I want my first full animation to be something else. But here's the scene redone with different visuals.
Get back here, Shocker! Shocker! You can't escape me! I'll chase you to the ends of the earth!
Yeah, it's far from the best, but it gives you an idea of how it could have played out differently. Like emphasizing the symbiote physically changing its outside appearance to be closer to what Venom was going to be. The show is really great, despite some of its odd editing choices. I mentioned the show got cut short, and that's true. The final season would have had Spider-Man arriving in Victoria, England to find Mary Jane, specifically during the spree of Jack the Ripper, who would have been revealed to be Carnage. Yeah, it's weird. John Semper really seems to like that time period and has some interesting animations on his YouTube with furries in that time period. I guess check it out if you want. Link for that's in the description. I'm Lyle Convoy, and I hope you enjoyed this video. If you want, you can support me on Patreon or join the community Discord. Take it easy, and I'll see you next time.